Yeah, let's not talk about opt-in.
Okay. I punish myself. That's secretly what it is.
So here he is again. It's Matt Gaunt.
Thanks, everyone. So this talk is going to be about cross-device development. Like Jake said, if my clicker would work. My name is Matthew Gaunt. I have this wonderful photo thanks to Adi Osmani. He took the photo. He then decided, I know what, I want to exercise my Photoshop skills and make him like Popeye. So thank you, Mr. Osmani. You could argue that there shouldn't really be a need for this kind of talk in the sense that one of the beauties of the web is the fact that if you've got a browser, it does mean that you can sit there and develop for it. But the biggest issue with mobile devices is you can imagine a scenario like this. This poor guy is sitting there thinking, I'm going to develop for all of those, and it's going to be great. By his face, maybe not so much. And I think the main reason that it kind of becomes a bit difficult is you have this environment on your desktop where you're developing. What is the road to go from your desktop to supporting all these devices? What are going to be the obstacles? How do you get around them? How do you essentially smooth out that path? And we've all seen that whole dragging backwards and forwards the window. And I think generally people will fall into two camps pretty quickly. Like they think, no, that's not mobile development. That's awful. How could you claim that? The other side will be like, well, it's not that bad. It just helps you get there. My kind of opinion is it helps you focus on the content rather than necessarily devices, which is the right way of doing things, in my opinion. But at the same time, you can imagine a scenario like this, where if you take a Nexus 4, you put it in landscape, it's sort of the same size as a Nexus 7 in portrait. And realistically, I don't want to give users the same experience on both those scenarios based off of width. And then you can start obviously doing media queries with orientation. But unless you actually sit there with a device in your hand playing around with it, the incentive to go and do that extra work may not be apparent. So we get to this point where we say, well, OK, I need to support these devices. And this kind of looks like a nice structured way of having all your devices in a nice, beautiful wall. But it's still daunting as to how you can actually utilize this and develop in a sane way. So for me, I still break things down into 3 buckets for how I like to approach these kind of things. Number one is the iteration speed. When I'm developing, I want to be able to get a fast turnaround over what I'm doing. Second one is launching. And that kind of sounds a bit insane, the fact that I'm going to tell you how to launch a browser, like tap that little icon. But I'm going to. And then there's emulation. As Mr. Paul Irish has shown you, there's already one tool. So iterations. For me, one of the main reasons people like tools like Live Reload are the fact that you don't have to hit this icon. And it's kind of insane to say it, but there are still people who are constantly just hitting refresh. I watched one guy who had made a change in his text editor, went to Chrome, he hit a plugin that would clear the cache, then hit the refresh button, and he was doing that for each change. And I was just like, what are you doing? Just open DevTools, it clears the cache, and then use Live Reload, and then you don't touch anything. And for me, I use Gaunt for a build tool. But one of the nice things is you get a load of these extra modules for free. And one of those that I literally rely on is Live Reload. So if you're not familiar with Gaunt, I think there was like half that maybe used it. It's essentially a way of pulling in third-party modules and tasks that would essentially perform some action for you. So the main one for Live Reload is this watch task right here. And basically, what this is doing is saying, whenever a file changes in my file system, I want you to perform certain tasks. So here we've got our Compass task. And whenever a SAS file changes, I want you to run the Compass server and then run this auto prefixer task. Now, I loved Flexbox when it first started coming out and I was playing with it. The thing I hated was the fact that I had multiple versions with multiple vendor prefixes that I had to deal with. Auto prefixer just took all of that away, and I've literally never looked back. So once we've got these other tasks that have run through and changed whatever we need, we have this Live Reload task. Now what Live Reload will do is it'll inject a script into my HTML, and then basically it'll start running the library load server in the back end as well. So what that means is whenever I make a change, it'll tell the browser to update. So that's definitely not what I want. There we go. So what that means is as soon as I come into here, I can start making my page look beautiful. Yeah, there we go. And obviously, like I said, it's not just necessarily Sass and everything else. It'll start changing files when it comes to JavaScript as well. And this is great because it's not just something that you have in desktop. This applies to mobile as well. But you could be quite fooled into thinking, well, that all sounds good and great, but that grunt file and all the stuff that you've done is kind of horrible, and I'd completely agree with you. If I were to write that, I would fail miserably and probably spend several hours crying, making every single task play nice. And it's at that point, you can use something like Yeoman. If you haven't, who's heard of Yeoman before? OK, a lot, good. For those who haven't, Yeoman is essentially a tool that helps you scaffold out a new project. It kind of gives you a good set of defaults, and it can also ask you a set of things that you might want to add in that is kind of specific to you, personal taste. And the main reason I like Yeoman is because it can kind of touch on the whole life cycle of your app. It doesn't necessarily just have to be build or specific tools that you like. It can actually touch on a number of things. And when we were first talking about Yeoman and web development and whether it should be mobile first or anything else, we sat and said, well, do people want a load of tools specific to mobile? And if they do, what are those tools going to be? So me and Addy, we kind of come up with this notion of, well, what I really want to do is basically have a mobile builder and find out what tools people actually want to use. So we came up with the mobile generator. So the way you work with Yeoman is you say yo, and then the project you want to scaffold out. So in this case, mobile. Yeah, there we go. Brief moment of fear where I thought demo was going to fail. So the kind of things this gives you is it'll give you first a choice of whichever framework you want to build with. So whether that's Bootstrap, Pure CSS, Topcoat, Foundation. It'll then ask you whether you want to include any boilerplate from that framework. So something like Bootstrap, it comes with that kind of canonical responsive design. It'll also add in a task that could do the source set for you. So it'll resize the images, create the source. If you've ever come across FastClick from FT Labs, it's designed to remove a 300 millisecond delay in some of the browsers, although that's going away pretty fast with Firefox and Chrome at least. It can also add in a task for Phantom.js and Casper.js, which is it's a way of essentially taking your web page, start a server, and then basically change the viewport for you, and then create a set of images. So that way you kind of get a really quick turnaround as to what your site looks like across various devices, well, viewport sizes. Browser stack testing, the idea with this is you could just go grunt open Nexus 5, and then it would just go to browser stack in a new tab and open up a Nexus 5 emulator for you, or whatever it might be. Require JS support, converting images to WebP, a polyfill for async local storage, also some boilerplate for full screen API. It's kind of interesting seeing what people are trying to do around this because you need user interaction. If you can kind of get the user to scroll, and then as soon as they start scrolling off the URL bar, then kick in full screen API. This just simplifies it for you. And the last thing we offered developers was if you're using Modernizer to basically help you with feature detection, it's kind of nice in development stage just to have all the tests you could want. But at the same time, good practice is you sit there and pick the tests you actually need and clear it out afterwards. And there's a task exactly for that. I'm not going to build it because it takes forever with NPM. But the point of this is the fact that with Yeoman, it kind of exposes you to a new kind of workflow in the sense of there's a load of tools out there that you can use and just basically get it at your fingertips. Why haven't you gone full screen? There we go. So if you haven't checked it out, it's well worth just playing around with it. You can get it from NPM, and it has a load of good features. Now, live reload, it isn't just Grunt. There are a number of other tools out there that do it. One of them is GhostLab. Now, GhostLab has this really nice other feature, which I'm going to give you a quick demo of. There we go. So one of the nice features with GhostLab is you can drag a directory. It creates a server for you, and it will do the live reloading. But one of the other cool features, if I launch just a demo page, which is just a plain HTML spot. Do I have this on my tablet? Yes. Let's move that out of the way. All right, so you can sort of see tablet there. Now, one of the nice things here is it starts syncing up what I'm doing on my desktop with what's going on the tablet. Now, you can imagine a really nice scenario where if you're testing across multiple devices and you want to see what the entire UI of all of those devices looks like, you can just do it from your desktop. And it's not just scrolling. You can sit there and type away. It'll do clicks and options, and it's just a really nice, pleasant way of just syncing up multiple devices. So I think whatever you end up using for tools, I think it's worth considering how fast you can actually get a turnaround over what you're doing. So the next thing is launching. Like, I kind of spared you from it with that demo where I painfully try and type in an IP address and then fail miserably. But out of interest, of all those people who test on multiple devices, who also then regularly test across multiple browsers on those devices? OK, handful of people. And you can kind of imagine why, right? Like, it's kind of a pain in the backside. And the main reason for that is you've got to go across each of those devices, select each of the browsers that you want to test against, and then repeat for the next version if you want to test across that. And then also, you've got to enter in the IP address. And you could argue, well, you put a bookmark, or hopefully no one touches the devices. So when I open up that browser, it's pointing to my machine, and no one ever touches it, and it's all fine and dandy. But you still got to touch the browser anyway, and it's kind of a bottleneck for the number of devices you test against. So I came up with this thing to scratch that itch for myself, and I'm hoping that other people will find it kind of helpful as well. And it's called Mini Device Lab because I have no imagination whatsoever. So all it is a small Cordova application with a couple of plugins that I've written. Can I position this in a sane way? Kind of, but not really. OK, so I sign in with Google+. And what that's going to do is basically generate an account for this device lab. Please work. I knew this was going to let me down. I've been sitting there going through it. There we go. No apps, no devices in the lab. So I hit sign in on both of these. It won't ask me to do anything because Google Plus sign in has this nice thing where you don't have to do it once you've agreed once. So once you've done that, you literally don't need this app anymore. So I'm going to fling it into the abyss. Hit refresh on my desktop. Oh, that's definitely not good. Cool, there we go. So now I've got two devices, and I've got a couple of browsers. So if I hit launch on this, damn you, Nexus 10. See, what's going to be really bad as well is the Nexus 10 is going to kick in as soon as I start doing other stuff. There we go. So the idea with this is I enter in a URL, and it launches across the devices in that device lab. Now, the nice thing with this, if I go back to our lovely Ghost Labs demo, and I want to launch it in, let's say, Firefox. Damn you, Twitter. I'm presenting and you know it. So if I go and select Firefox to launch across those devices, it's not totally clear, but the tablet has launched Firefox with the URL, and the Nexus 4 has gone to the Play Store because it's not pre-installed. So even though you haven't got the browsers there, it kind of simplifies it a little bit to some extent. And the idea with this was literally to get to this point where it encourages you to have multiple devices that you can actually develop against and actually support the browsers that are on those devices. At the moment, it is 100% in alpha stage, as you kind of saw from my praying to the gods that it would work. But it's all open sourced on GitHub. You still have to sort out your own App Engine instance and stuff. But I'm hoping to get to a point where I can just release it on the Play Store and it'll have iOS support and other stuff, because it is just a Cordova application. I just need to do the plugin bit. And the main thing with it as well is a lot of the tools out there say enter in this IP address. And I kind of wanted to get to a point where it will work with those tools. They don't get in the way. So that's what I was going to say on launch. So then the other thing is emulation with emulators and all the other stuff. And I kind of expect most of you might be sitting there thinking, well, hang on. You've talked about DevTools emulation. Now you're talking about devices. And now you're talking about emulators as well. Why do I need all these different options? What the hell are you talking about? And they all have pros and cons. Devices, the big con of these is you have to buy them. Nobody wants to spend money on these kind of things. But at the same time, you kind of need them. Like, you get close to what the user is going to be experiencing at the end of the day. And arguably, they can be easier to work with compared to the other stuff. DevTools emulation, it's great for sanity checking what you're going to end up giving to a user. But the problem is you're still in Chrome. You're still in Chrome on the desktop. That's it. You don't have feature parity with Chrome for Android. So if you imagined back in the day when WebRTC may have come to Chrome for desktop and not Chrome for Android, it'll still look like you've got WebRTC on a Nexus 4 in DevTools emulation. You install it on the device, and obviously it'll fail. But it is still awesome for the fact that you're testing the UI. Emulators, they're incredibly useful when you need to test a particular platform and essentially specific configurations. The biggest problem is sometimes it can be a bit of a faff to sort out. Performance doesn't necessarily match the device either. iOS is super fast, and you might find you have performance issues on the device. Android is kind of notoriously bad out of the box just when you start using it. And the other thing is there is no, I should have said this, no app stores, which means there's no evergreen browsers that you can get into those emulators. I think Firefox have public builds available for their APKs. We have Content Shell, which you can actually get, and it's basically like Chrome for Android, the rendering, but without any of the nice Chromey bits. The link at the bottom is to an article Paul Kinlan had put together, and basically it's a shell script. It'll look at the latest part of the source tree with the latest build of Content Shell, and then install it to anything that is connected to ATB at that time. So if you've got an emulator open or a device connected, it'll install Content Shell. So I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce this, so I'm going to say it's Intel X Ham to be official, but I'm going to call it Extreme Ham. This is essentially something you can install on your machine from Intel, and basically, if you use an Intel-based Android emulator as well from the SDK tools, it basically allows the emulator to get access to the CPU and run a bit faster than what you would normally get. The other one, has any of you guys heard of Jeannie Motion before? That guy has. So Jeannie Motion is a company which is basically building versions of, I did have it. Oh, there we go. So they basically take builds of Android, and I believe they put it inside like a VirtualBox style environment. So it runs quite smoothly. Now, you've still got that issue. It doesn't have the Play Store, but it shows up in ADB. So if you've got the APKs again, you can just install it on there. It's quite a nice option. I think there might be some stuff around the kinds of processor that it's running as in VirtualBox, but it's quite speedy. And if you just need to support the Android browser, like, it's already there. So it might be a slightly nicer way to support that. Save you pulling your hair out and looking like Paul Lewis. So there are cloud-based emulator options as well. I'm sure you guys have seen this. Browser Stack kind of focuses more on the interactive playing around with of emulators. They've got a much wider range of devices than I've seen anywhere else in terms of like emulating different viewport sizes and resolutions, etc. But it does still kind of suffer with the no evergreen browsers. Source Labs is another one. Both of these have local tunneling support, so you can just route your local server to them. The interesting thing with Source Labs is they have interactive session support, but they kind of focus more towards the automated testing. So they have WebDriver support. And the nice thing with that is if you run through a script and tell it to say, enter in this text item, click these buttons, scroll here, it'll actually record a video of that entire session so you can review it at the end. And then the last one that I was going to talk about was Device Anywhere. The nice thing with what these guys are doing is basically you're controlling real devices there and then. They've basically allowed you to control them remotely, which means you're essentially getting the actual ROMs that come with these devices, so any browsers that come with them. And if you're finding you've got quirks that are really specific to one device, this might be a really nice way of finding out what those are without actually needing to buy the device. The one and only criticism of this is they are actually real devices, which mean people go into settings and say, hey, I'm going to put a password on this phone. Enjoy. There is like a help box on the side, so you can hopefully just get it fixed, but it takes a little while. So if you were kind of pushing something out the door and then someone goes, can you just check this? That kind of be a bit disappointing at that point. So you've got all these emulators, and it's all super awesome. And then you come to debugging a problem. So there is Winery. It's kind of one of those things that you wish just didn't ever exist, but at the same time you love it because it's kind of a last resort. You can get it from NPM, install it, and just add a script tag, and it'll just start basically giving you really basic debugging. So if you've got nothing else, give it a go. For the Android web view, there's also this JS High Bugger. And it does some really quite clever stuff that essentially allows you to debug the web view using Chrome DevTools. So I have my ever useful touch example application, which I can show you there. And I drag that down, and the little Android pops up. That's literally all it does. But if I go into Chrome Inspect and fumble about a bit, there we go. You should see that we get this JS. Come on. You get this JS High Bugger that comes up in About Inspect. So this is just the everyday Android web view. But one of the really nice things with this is you can go in, as you would before, change various aspects of the entire thing. But what I kind of accidentally fumbled around and found this, but you can actually put breakpoints into the JavaScript. So at that point, I've put a break on change state, ending touch. So the minute I left it off, it just starts going, hey, what do you want to do? But it comes with the whole set of really nice features that Winery simply doesn't have. So if you're kind of getting to this point where Android WebView and Winery and it just doesn't work, it's definitely worth checking JS High Bugger. And there's also a plugin for Cordova, so you can literally add the plugin and you get all of that set up. Go. The last thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of emulation is the notion of basically throttling your network to see what a user might be getting. This video is like an old version of my website, and essentially one side has Wi-Fi, the other side has 2G connection. Guess which one is which? And the really nice thing with this is it's easy to forget that one way or another network speed is going to be a real big variable for your users. And what I particularly like is the notion of if you're showing text and it's actually appearing really fast, but you've basically waiting for a heavy background image to load up, you can just apply like a dark background, and hopefully things will appear a bit faster. This is a nice way of just giving you access to see that that's going to have an effect. Same as if you actually spend time smooshing down all of your resources, you can actually kind of see the benefit of it. The link at the bottom is for Matt Gemmel's blog post on network link conditioning, which is OS X. But Charles Proxy seems to be kind of the cross-platform option for throttling your network speed. There we go. So that, for me, is kind of the whole suite of things for mobile development. Find a flow that works for you on desktop and then gives you the extra tools that you want for mobile. I'd say consider having a little look at Device Lab and having a play with it, because for me, it was one thing that really became apparent as being an issue. And then emulation. Just try and get yourself set up with the emulators that you know you're probably going to want to use. And just try and treat it as kind of a part of your workflow. So that's all I was going to say. I've included some, there we go, some links. The GitHub link for the mini Device Lab, mobile on HFR Rocks. There's also my Google I/O talk on modern workflow, and then Adi Osmani has done another awesome set of presentations on modern workflow as well. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Excellent stuff. So it's now another break. The breakout sessions that are happening later, they've been selected based on your votes. If you want to know where they're going to take place, you can go to bit.ly/CDS breakouts. But they're also listed on a board outside, so you can just have a look there. Some of them are going to be in here, but some of them are going to be elsewhere, so you can find out which ones you want to take part in. So Paul and Matt are going to be upstairs doing Q&A during the break, so if you have any questions to ask them, they'll be up there. And then we're back at 3:30 when the Chrome and Android leads are going to be